Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. I'm I'm glad I'm back, so we can study Torah once again. It's a great feeling to have Torah L'chaim again, and to start basically our preparation for the high holidays around the corner. I don't know if you guys realize that. I surely did. I surely did. Hello, Shelly Chochinov. Welcome to the class. Jerome Fomin is here as well. Who else is there? Let me know in the chat. Maria is here. Welcome. Welcome, Maria. And we are going to study a little bit today about Parshat Tetzei. But then I realized when I was preparing this week's Parsha for the class, Randy is here. Welcome, Randy. When I was preparing this class, that the Parsha really connects with the topic of Teshuva, which is basically what we have to do in preparation for the high holidays. We're going to talk a little bit more of that during the class. Hello, Holly. Holly's here. Welcome to the class. Teshuva, Tetzei, they are all connected. I don't think it's a coincidence. That we can find so many topics within the Parsha that they are tied together with the concept of Teshuva and the preparation for the high holidays. But if you never make the connection, I will talk about that today. Just waiting a couple of more minutes to see who else is coming to the party, to the study party, to the Torah L'chaim class. It's been a while, so I understand if some of you are they have to remember to keep coming back on Thursday to study. But I'm so glad of all of you guys, Shelly, Jerome, Maria, Randy, and Holly, that you did remember. You did remember that we have our class today. Okay, so we are going to start right away studying Parsha Tetzei. Let me bring the text here of Parsha Tetzei. And this is what is it about. This is what is so interesting. It seems to be a Parsha, a Torah portion, dedicated to these rules for soldiers. I don't know if you remember one of the things that actually was no surprise. The people of Israel were warned about this. Is part of the entering into the promised land will involve lots of wars. They had to clean up that land from all the idol worshippers nations. That was God's command at the time. We can discuss another time about if that's right or not, but that's not the point at this time. It was a fact. It was a fact that that's what they had to do. Lots of wars. So it seems to be Moses here reminding the Jewish people that it's not just going to war where they will have to follow certain rules every time they will go to war against one of these nations. Okay? Shelly Chochinov, what do you say there? It's a concept on a personal level that many of us, myself included, have difficulty with. Are you talking about Teshuva? I will put it here. Are you talking about Teshuva? Let me know in the chat, Shelly, what are you referring to with this? Okay? And yeah. So, again, we have two ways to read this Parsha. Oh, yeah. Yes, Shelly, is it Teshuva? Okay. Yeah, it is difficult. It's not impossible, but I think it's necessary. Just be patient. We are going to talk about that. But this topic of going to war against all these nations seems to be a weird thing, because that's something that seems to be applicable to just those generations. But with what happened with us? We don't really go to war in the same way that those nations used to go to war back then. So how can we make this text meaningful to us? It seems to me, actually, that the Torah wouldn't spend all these chapters talking so much about something that it was specific for one generation and that's it. That doesn't, the Torah doesn't work that way. So it's up to us when we read all this text to try to find the meaning that it will help us or inspire us or motivate us. So how is this parsha talking to us in the 21st century? Well, we're going to see that because we are not the only one asking that question. Many rabbis asked that question before. And I'm going to share with you what they have to say about this. But first, let's read it. Hello, Amparo. Welcome to the class. Let's read this. It says, Ki tetzei la milchama al oyevecha unetano Adonai Elohecha beyadecha veshavita shivyo. And in English, when you take the field against your enemies, and your God delivers them into your power, and you take some of them captive. Okay? This is very interesting because it says here that eventually you could be in a situation where you're going to take captives. It's not that you are going to kill them all. You may take sometimes captives. Let's continue because the next verse is even more interesting. And now they said you take captives, and what happened with the captives? And you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire her, and will take her into your household as your wife. Okay, this is the introduction to the law. And then it will continue to say that it's not just like that. There are many things that you can do and things that you cannot do. Okay? But what is interesting here, as I mentioned before, is that one way to read the text is literally, right? It's talking about a specific battle, a specific war. The other way to read this text is, this is an allegory. Don't read this war as a literal war. Read this text as a different kind of war. Not a war that you will fight with swords or guns or missiles, but a war that happens inside yourself. I'm pretty sure now you can already see the connection between this parsha and the concept of Teshuva, right? When we talk about things like that. Can you see it? I hope you can. So, even Rashi already mentioned that. And Rashi said about this parsha, the Torah only speaks versus the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. So in other words, what Rashi says is, what this parsha is talking about here is not about a battle against a physical enemy. Parsha Ki Tetzei is talking about an enemy that is inside you. And that enemy is called the Yetzer Hara. Sometimes we translate it into evil inclination or negative inclination. The opposite of Yetzer Hara in Judaism is Yetzer HaTov, which sometimes we translate it into the good inclination and things like that. Tov in Hebrew means good. Okay? And Yetzer sometimes, we translate it into inclination, but could be drive, urge, or something like that. Okay, so the good, you can have here the evil drive versus the good drive or the positive drive. Okay, so you have to be aware that the rabbis always talk about the two things. Now, the thing is here that Rashi mentions that the Torah is talking about, what the Torah is talking about here is an allegory to the Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination. And it says that we have to go to war against it. And it's not talking specifically here about killing it. It's talking about taking it prisoner. And then it says, but be careful. You're going to take it prisoner. Okay? And you're going to be tempted what will you have now. There is lots of temptation there. That's what it says here. And you see, the evil inclination now is it's like again, another allegory, like a beautiful woman, right? Like a beautiful woman. And then you want to marry this beautiful woman. In other words, you wanna enter into a long-term relationship with your Yetzer Hara. Can you see this? This is interesting. Are you allowed to enter into a long-term relationship with your Yetzer Hara, or you have to kill and eliminate your Yetzer Hara, so the only thing you have left is the Yetzer Hatov. Hello, Josue Rivera, welcome. 10 a.m. What is that, California? Where you are? Are you in California? Let me know in the chat. But welcome to the class, Josue. Okay, so this is... okay, Shelly. See you later. Okay, so you have an idea now that we're talking about. We're going to continue in a minute, but first I wanted to present to you also a Hasidic commentary about the concept of going into war, okay? Because there is so much things that we can learn from those two verses. So let me read for you this comment here. The Hebrew phrase al oyevecha, okay? Remember, let me read it again. Here it says ki tetzei lamilchama al oyevecha in Hebrew, al oyevecha. Okay, so the Hebrew phrase al oyevecha, on your enemy, can also be understood in the literal sense of on top. Al, so in modern Hebrew, al means on top of something. If you want to put something on top of a table, you say al hashulchan, on top of the table, right? So the way you read the verse could be understood, al oyevecha is against your enemies, right? But it's figure speech. But here the rabbi said, but we can also understand it literally. Forget about the taking al oyevecha as an idiom of figure speech. Let's read it literally. Al oyevecha means on top of your enemies. Okay? So the rabbi says, in every battle, the way to achieve victory is to gain the higher ground. We must never stoop to the level of evil. Oh, please enjoy every word here. This is amazing. This is amazing. Try to enjoy every word. It's beautiful. We must never stoop to the level of evil. This applies to so many things, eh? To fight it on its own terms. In the words of our sages, one who wrestles with a filthy person becomes dirtied as well. Rather, we should rise above it, affirming our belief that there is no true existence other than God, and that nothing contrary to His goodness and truth has any real power. When our going to war is in a manner of on your enemies, we are guaranteed that God shall deliver them into your hands. Oh, I want to hear your comments here. The chat is too quiet right now because I want to know what you think about this. And I totally agree that sometimes we have a temptation when we encounter evil that we want to be at the same level. Somebody yells, we yell, right? Somebody gossip, we gossip. It says that's not the way we do it. If we want to be successful against the Yetzer Hara, we should never play at the level of Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, one of the things that we get from the Yetzer Hara is temptation, trickery, and stuff like that. So we should never do things like that. We should always be above the level of evil, always. But again, it seems to imply that, Holly, I agree. The advice works on a personal level, and that's what he's talking about here. He's talking about a personal level. Every battle that we are reading here in the Torah, in general, every war that you're reading the Torah could be also understood as a war that you fight with yourself. And then it makes so much more sense when the Torah will say, for example, kill them all. That sometimes we struggle. So what do you mean? You're committing genocide, right? When the Torah says that. But if you take it as an allegory and it's talking about a war within yourself, when the Torah says kill them all, don't leave anybody alive, it's talking about some specific characteristics that we should totally eliminate from our lives. Unfortunately, the Yetzer Hara is not something that the rabbis say that we should eliminate. They said we should be on top of it. We should take it prisoner, and it should be under our control. That's why it says, let me go back here, the language. Language is everything here when you read Torah. It says, Unetano Adonai Elohecha beyadecha. It says, God will deliver it into your hand. So why would the Torah say that the enemy will be on your hand? And the rabbis explain that the Yetzer Hara should be on your hand and not you on the Yetzer Hara's hand. You understand the difference? You should be the one holding it and not the other way around. You should control the Yetzer Hara, not the Yetzer Hara controlling you. The rabbis insist, by the way, let me come back here. The rabbis insist that the Yetzer Hara is very necessary. The thing is, we have to fight hard sometimes to find ways to control it. Otherwise, we will go through life being controlled by our temptations and our drives, our urges. And we know that that's not good because we have temptations all the time and we have things that move us all the time. Desires for power, for sex, for money, for honor. You name it. You know what I'm talking about. All those things, the rabbi says, are coming from the Yetzer Hara. So it's not that we have to eliminate it because we still get married, we have businesses, right? It's that we have to learn how to control it. But the Torah says it's not easy. You have to fight hard. And how do you fight? You have to find ways to be above that. Howard, what you said? We are here for Tikkun Olam, repair the world. I think God is in control of it all. Therefore, whatever we do will help. Randy said, but the issue is how to stop our own thoughts. Okay. I get you. And I don't think you can control your thoughts. It's not about that. You cannot control your thoughts. Okay, thoughts. But the thing is, thoughts come and go. One of my secrets to control your thoughts is, if you have bad thoughts, never talk about them. Never talk about them, because speech. Remember this. Speech. Hold on, I will put the text here. Speech is above thought. So sometimes we have bad thoughts and we try to have good thoughts, but it says, the way we do it is through speech. That's why the rabbis, when they are struggling with bad thoughts and things, what they do, they recite psalms, they pray, but with an audible voice, because speech is above thought. But yeah, you have to be careful with thoughts as well, because sometimes we catch thoughts from other people. Not necessarily good people. I don't want to talk too much about that because I was thinking, writing a sermon about that for the high holidays, about how we catch things from people around us. So one of the strategies that we should have when we go to war against the Yetzer Hara, because we shouldn't fool ourselves. We have to come out with a strategy. One of the strategies is to be careful who is around us, because we catch things from people around us That's how we got a pandemic in the first place. Because if you have somebody around you with COVID, you will catch it, right? But there are many other things that you can catch from people around you. Now you can understand why I got inspired to write something deeper about it for the high holidays. But I think that's what it is. So let me take a second. You say here, Howard, look back the experience, we think the words of the words. Yeah, but we have to be careful with the thoughts, but sometimes we have to also be careful about not talking about our bad thoughts, because otherwise we are planting a seed of that. Okay? If we are going to talk about is to defeat the bad thoughts. If you think that, you know, your thought is, I can't do it. I can't do it. So don't say it out loud. Don't say out loud. Don't start talking to people about how you cannot do it. Because then you are writing your own, it's a self-fulfilled prophecy. So if you're going to talk about it, talk in the positive. Talk in the positive. Talk about how, yes, you will be able to do it, and so forth. Okay? It's, but again, thoughts, you can't control what comes to your head, but you can control what you say or what you don't say. That's my opinion about that. So let's continue. I have another comment about this that comes from the Baal Shem Tov. This is the creator of Hasidism. Okay? And he said, also from one's spiritual enemies, one must capture captives. Anything negative in man or in the world can be exploited for the good. You see, this is what I'm talking about. This is the way we should relate to the Yetzer Hara. Let me continue. If one can derive a lesson from it in the service of the Creator. So in other words, it seems to imply that our goal in life is to learn how to use our Yetzer Hara for our benefit. Okay? And the rabbis give many examples of that. Many examples of that. And they have a very famous midrash. I don't have it for the class, but I'm trying to remember. They were saying that this is a parable, right? That said that the rabbi was able to capture the Yetzer Hara and put it on a cage. Okay, the parable said that the rabbi was able to capture the Yetzer Hara. So the whole world didn't have Yetzer Hara anymore. And I said what happened is people never got married anymore. Nobody went to work, right? And so far nobody did anything, and then humanity was doomed. Because we still need certain motivation to get us out of bed. And he said that comes from the control of the Yetzer Hara. The desire, for example, to do a business, and etc. etc. So he says, with the Baal Shem Tov is here, it says you capture it and you use it, you exploit it for your own good, And one of the rabbis who wrote about this was the famous Rabbi Susha of Anipoli. And he basically was asked point blank by his students, how can you say that you can get something good out of the Yetzer Hara? And they started to challenge him. What can we learn from a thief, for example? Or what? And what he said was pure gold. Listen to this. He says, I learned 7 things from a thief. Okay? Number 1, what he does, he keeps to himself. Number 2, he's willing to take risks to attain his goal. Number 3, he does not distinguish between major and minor things, but takes equally exacting care of each and every detail. He invests great effort in what he does. He's swift. He's always optimistic. If at first he fails, he's back time and again for another try. And this is a perfect example on how you can have a positive message from virtually everything if you know where to look for. And the same happens with our own quote-unquote flaws. That sometimes it's not about eliminating it, but it's about learning how to use it to your favor. And it happens with many things. Many people actually discover their career or what they wanted to do or to leave a mark in their generations by analyzing their flaws and then discovering that it was not a flaw at all. So it's but it takes lots of introspection to really discover who we are and how we can use our Yetzer Hara for our benefit. But now, this is the thing. If you want to be successful, you have to go back to the beginning of this week's Parsha, Tetzei, right? It's a war. What do you learn from a general? Use the chat if you want. What do you learn from a general that is about to go to war? Think about any war. Think about great generals in history. What did they do to be successful? Take a second. Think about it. Sorry, I got addicted to this soda, which is amazing. No comments? I will say it in a second. If nobody's typing it in the chat, what do you learn from successful generals? Let's see. They planned beforehand. Jerome Fomin. I will highlight this. You were the first of saying it. Thank you, Jerome. That's exactly what I was thinking. Listen to this. The book of Proverbs already said that. The Proverbs we read. Okay. Randy said, respect the enemy. Let's put it this first. He said, respect the enemy. Holly, you said, always be prepared. In particular, make sure your troops have provisions. Okay. And Jerome, you also said, set goals, right? All very valuable and very interesting things. But what they have in common is it has to be planned in advance. If you want to respect the enemy, that will have to be discussed with the troop in advance. If you need provisions for your troops, you have to calculate, okay, how long it's going to be? Where am I going to take the provisions? Howard is a faith and leadership, right? But those are things that you can't improvise. It has to be planned. And the book of Proverbs already said it. And it says, for by strategy you wage war, and victory comes with much planning. So let me tell you something. If we know historically that wars are won by strategy and much planning, okay? Why do we have the tendency to think that we can go to war against our Yetzer Hara without any strategy and be successful? It's not much different. And I'm saying this because, again, we are approaching the high holidays. The high holidays, part of the preparation is Teshuva. Teshuva, which I will want to talk about in a minute. Teshuva is the concept of repentance involved analyzing how we deal with Yetzer Hara during the year. Are we controlling Yetzer Hara or Yetzer Hara is controlling us? And if it's controlling us, why is that happening? Maybe our strategy is not solid. Maybe our strategy is wrong. Maybe we don't have a strategy at all and we just let it happen, And then we can't complain. And then we keep failing again and again. And we know that there are many things, right? Randy, you said emotions take over. Yeah, sometimes it happens. Let's say that you are aware. You are aware that your emotions are taking over your life. What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that? I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine that he wanted to go kosher. Okay, and he was saying how difficult it is, and then he quit because he couldn't handle it, and then I realized that this person wanted to go kosher, wanted to start keeping a kosher life, but didn't set any boundaries. For example, with other people trying to convince this person to eat everything, or so you can't just do it. You need to have a plan, a strategy. And we know it. There's people who wants to stop drinking, for example, or they're doing drugs and they want to stop it. It just doesn't happen like that. Or stop smoking. You need a plan. You need a plan. You need to you need to rethink who your friends are, for example. You need to rethink your boundaries. You need to rethink who your support is or where your support is coming from. So that's all part of the strategy. Of course it can fail. And then you can, and it happened with the greatest generals. They lose a battle, but they realize that they still have a chance to win the war. When we approach the high holidays, we have to have that mentality that we lost many battles during the past year, but this is a long-term war calling our life, and we still have chances to improve. But it implies that we need a plan. We need strategy. You can have many great goals in your life, but without a strategy, the goals are just dreams that they won't go anywhere. So that's why I don't think it's a coincidence that we read Tetzei a couple of weeks before the high holidays. So we understand that you cannot get into the high holidays season without planning, without a strategy. And how, so the strategy involves, start with a question. What am I going to do to make the next year different from the previous year? Especially if I feel that the previous year wasn't as great as it should have gone because I failed in certain areas. What am I going to do differently so next year is going to be different? Because you know how it works. If you don't do anything different, the result is going to be the same. All part of a strategy. Tetzei milchama. When you present war to your Yetzer Hara, right? You have to be aware that you need a strategy. And the other thing is the second verse that it says that when you see a beautiful woman, the concept of a beautiful woman is don't fool yourself. You're going to be tempted many times. But the Yetzer Hara is going to try to trick you. But you have to, anyway, be in control and be always above Yetzer Hara. Okay, any more comments, please type it in the chat. I'm going to continue with the next text, which is basically what I mentioned before, the concept of Teshuva. Okay, what we say that we use this word a lot during the high holidays, the Teshuva, but what Teshuva is, right? This is the next step after you present the war against the Yetzer Hara. Now you want to repair what you already did wrong. You fell victim of the Yetzer Hara for so long. Now you finally plan, you presented a strategy, but what about all the mistakes that you already made? Well, according to the rabbis, you still have the opportunity to try to repair some of the things, some of your mistakes. The process of repairing all what was already done and planning a strategy so you won't repeat it, that thing is called Teshuva. the book of Hosea, for example, it will say very clearly, return, O Israel, unto the Lord your God, for you have stumbled in your transgression. So it basically seems to imply that when we transgress, one of the consequences, or I like it, one of the byproducts of our transgressions is that we take distance from God. It's a consequence. You know, the phrase that to every action there is a reaction. One of the reactions of our transgressions is that we get a little bit detached from God. In other words, we cannot perceive the presence of God in the same way that a person who does not transgress. But it says, Hosea, return to God. So in other words, we have the transgression, but we also have the opportunity to be aware of that and to make an effort to narrow the gap between us and our Creator. That process of narrowing that gap is also called Teshuva. And how we do that? Well, there are basically a few steps that we have to go through to complete the process of Teshuva before the high holidays. And the one who actually wrote a lot about Teshuva is Maimonides, the Rambam. If you ever have the opportunity to read everything that the Rambam wrote about Teshuva, I will highly recommend it. Okay? But this is a summary of what he said. Again, strategy, planning. You see how everything goes to the same place. He said, how does one do Teshuva? Number one, the transgressor stops doing the transgression and removes it from his thought, if possible, right? It's possible. But again, we talk about that. How do you remove it from your thought? Don't talk about that. Always talk about the solution, not about the problem. And that's how you remove it from your thought. Okay? Next, he resolves that he will not do it again in the future. Right? It's not about, oh, sorry for what I did yesterday, but then you do it again. So you're not sorry. You're not sorry. You have to resolve. You have to decide that you're not going to do it again. Next, he regrets that which he did in the past. You have to regret it. You have to take responsibility. It's fundamental to the process. Next, he verbally expresses his wrongdoing to God. You have to pray to God. Pray to God. And by the way, again, you know that when you pray to God, you have to say it out loud, right? You cannot pray to God in your thought. That is Jewish halakha, Jewish law. Even if it's a whisper, it has to be a voice when you pray to God. There are many examples in the Bible of things like this, that it was always involved voice when you pray to God. Have it in mind. So, he verbally expresses his verbally expresses his wrongdoings to God and makes a verbal resolution for the future. You have to have that conversation with God. Where? Not in synagogue. Although you could. I've seen people that they come to the sanctuary during the week. It's more common before the high holidays and sometimes before in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And they come to the sanctuary and they ask permission to come and they pray in front of the ark. I guess they get inspired, right, by the ark. And they have this kind of conversations with God. It's very common. Very common to have these kind of conversations with God during the high holidays in the synagogue. But you don't have to. You can do it at home. You can do it in your car. You can go for a walk and do it as you walk, and you stay and you go to a park or a forest or a lake or the mountains, and you have a conversation with God about all this. But I don't know if you realize that is also you need lots of introspection to try to remember and realize what you did. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Next, regarding wrongdoings against one's fellow man, one must reimburse whatever he owes him and ask the other person forgiveness. So you have to talk to God, but you also have to talk to the person you offended. works that way. Okay. So some say, Randy, you say, some say you witness your thoughts as an observer without resistance, and the negative thoughts dissolves. Okay, so I wish it were that easy. Yeah, but I like to think that thoughts come and go, and you have to train yourself also to understand that, and because otherwise we will say or do things that we will regret later. We realize that the thought came, and then another thought came, and you look at the whole thing from a different perspective, and then you are glad that you didn't do anything back then. So if the bad thought attacks, just hold your breath. Don't react right away. Thoughts come and go. Okay? So let's go back to Teshuva. And I want to give you this little chart here so you can relate about all the steps of the Teshuva in an easy format. Okay? So we have, based on Maimonides, at least four steps. Step 1 is the regret, also called harata, is to realize the extent of the damage and feel. You have to feel in your guts sincere regret. And that is related to the past, things you did in the past. But then step 2 and 3 relate to the present. Cessation, don't do anything else today, right? Not tomorrow, today. Stop doing it. Confession, the vidui, articulates the mistake privately to God and asks for forgiveness today. Not in the future, today. Doesn't matter you don't know how to talk to God, or some people say, Rabbi, I don't know how to pray. It's not prayer, it's just talk to God like God is your best friend. Just like that. That's a perfect image on how to talk to God. And then the step 4 is for the future, is the resolution. Okay? Make a firm commitment not to repeat it in the future. And I said it's in the future because we don't know when we are going to be in the same situation again. Maybe never. But if we are, you have to make a resolution for the future that if you are ever in the same situation, you are not going to fall prisoner to your Yetzer Hara ever again. Okay? And as I mentioned before, when we were talking about transgression and our distance with God, that's also something that we have to have into consideration. And that's why there is so much asking forgiveness to God during the high holidays. And we feel that there are many more prayers to bring us closer to God. Why? Because transgression takes us apart from God. So listen to this. It says, when a person transgresses, he defiles his soul. This impurity cuts him off and separates him from God. As long as impurity is present, he is distant from God. The request, forgive us, in the daily Amida is essentially a request to remove the barrier between ourselves and God. Every mitzvah, every commandment brings a person closer to God. So the root of the word mitzvah shares the same root of the word tzevat, a pair of pliers, a device for bonding two entities. In contrast, every transgression distances a person from God. The main aspect of sin is that it's so terrible. The main aspect of sin that is so terrible is that it causes him to be distant from God. Therefore, the ultimate aim of Teshuva is to return and regain our original closeness to God. And this is something that we have to remember. We can do Teshuva because we already were there. It's not that we are born apart from God and then we have to try to be together. We are born glued to God. And then little by little, with our actions, we get separated. So that's why it's also called Teshuva. Teshuva, to return. To return where? To return to a place that we already know because we were there before. We were there before, and we all have the potential to return to that state of mind, to that state of the soul, etc., which is the closeness with God. Again, every time you read the word Teshuva, remember, you were there already. The goal is for you to find the path back to that place. But you have to plan for it. It's like planning a trip. Planning a trip. You need to know where you're going to go. Otherwise, if you don't know where you go, it doesn't matter how fast your car is. You're not going to go anywhere. You're going to eventually run out of gas being in the middle of nowhere. But if you know where you're going, right? You see, go to the airport. You have planes going everywhere in the world. But first you need to know, if you go to the counter to get a ticket, the first question that we are going to ask you is, where are you going to go? And once you know where you're going to go, then you can buy a ticket. Some tickets are more expensive than others. But if you don't know where to go, you cannot go anywhere. Right? Very important. So remember that we believe that we are born in closeness to God. We say it every morning. If you come to daily services, this is we say it every morning at the beginning of our morning prayers. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai. At the Shari Zedek, if you come to Saturday morning services, we do Elohai, Elohai, neshama, neshama, shenatata bi, tehorai, tehorai. You may remember that from our services. It's here. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorai, ata berata, ata yetzarta, ata nafachta bi. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. This is, by the way, theologically, this is very important. In Judaism, we believe that we are born with a pure soul. We don't need any kind of baptisms or anything to make us pure. We are born pure already. Why? Because the soul comes from God. It's a theological statement. It's a theological belief of Judaism. It's good for you to know it, right? Different religions take it differently. But if you want to know Jewish point of view, is that the soul that we get when we are born is already pure. And that's our goal when we do Teshuva, to go back to that state, to that pure state that we had when we were born. Okay? So again, why is it pure? Because you created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me. That's why we believe that it's pure. But then every time we transgress, we take distance from God. And every time we do a commandment, and we listen to the voice of God, and we do what God asks us to do, we get one step closer to God. Or in other words, we remove one layer of dirt that is not allowing us to enjoy the light of God. Listen to this. Our sages teach us that all beginnings are difficult. God thus gives a person every opportunity, and once he makes the initial effort to do Teshuva, he's giving divine help. This is very important, because it says that God is looking at you, and if you start the process of Teshuva, God is going to meet you halfway. Because sometimes we believe that it's impossible, it's too difficult. Don't worry. And I'm entering now into the realm of belief. Okay? I can't present you facts or proof or anything. You have to believe it. You have to take the leap of faith. That if you engage in the process of Teshuva, you are sincere, God will be there meeting you halfway to help you complete the process. Okay? Let's continue here. God told his prophet Malachi, return to me and I will return to you. You come first, I will come to you, right? Our sages teach us that God says, make an opening for me like the eye of a needle, and I will open wide for you the gates of heaven. all things that we have to have into consideration when we do Teshuva. Okay? So, Teshuva literally translated means return. We believe that the soul is intrinsically pure and began its sojourn in this world in a state of purity. Mistakes and wrongdoings are departures from the essential nature of human soul. Therefore, when a person has done something wrong, the process of Teshuva is really that of going back to his or her true essence. And I have one more text for you today. And this is because when you engage in the process of Teshuva, there is a special name for you. You become a Baal or Baalat, if you're a female, Teshuva. Okay? Baal Teshuva or Baalat Teshuva, when you engage in the process of Teshuva. And the rabbis say that becoming a Baal Teshuva, it's something that has so much merit that you should be very proud of yourself. Usually people have the opposite feeling when they realize how many mistakes they made, how many transgressions. We feel guilty and we feel bad. We feel bad and we feel that we are never going to be loved by God anymore, because I just talked to you about the distance and everything, right? And so it is important for us to realize what the rabbis think that God thinks about us when we engage in the process of Teshuva. And I would like to close the class with this text. And hopefully this next text is going to encourage you and motivate you, inspire you to start planning, to start a strategy to change something in your life. You don't have to change everything. Everything is baby steps. Because if you change one thing next year, it may be a huge difference. Judaism is not all or nothing, okay? Always remember that. It's not all or nothing. There are many things that we know that it's impossible. We cannot do it right now, but we are going to do whatever we can right now. So let me finish, let me close, and let me wrap up with this text. It's also from the Maimonides, and he says, a Baal Teshuva should not think that he is less than a completely righteous person because he did transgression in the past. Rather, a Baal Teshuva is beloved and cherished by God as if he never transgressed at all. Additionally, his spiritual reward is great, since he has tasted sin and abandoned it. Therefore, he rules over his own drives. The sages say, in the place where Baalei Teshuva stand, even the complete righteous cannot stand. This is from the Talmud, by the way. This means that Baalei Teshuva achieve greater spiritual heights than those who never transgressed, since they have to exert themselves over the lower drives, in other words, over the Yetzer Hara, and thus exercise their power of free will more often. Wow. Well, I hope I did something today to motivate you to engage into the process of Teshuva and to start the process of introspection that is so important before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Something that we all have to do. Sometimes it involves conversation with our friends to see the way we offended them, or with our families. Did we treat our spouses or our children or our parents the way we should? Or we were victims of our Yetzer Hara and we were too proud to admit our mistakes, or so many things. So we have to engage in the process of introspection to realize if we did a mistake and go talk to them and repair relationships with everybody around us. And that includes God. Okay, thank you everyone. And remember, next week is not going to be Torah L'Chaim. Unfortunately, I know I just came back, I had to cancel. Unfortunately, I have a doctor's appointment with my son, so I won't be able to be here. So I will see you, God willing, in 2 weeks from now. So you have 2 weeks to to plan, to create a strategy for the high holidays. And next week, 2 weeks from now, we are going to study specifically about Rosh Hashanah and to get some concrete and practical information on how to enhance our experience during the Rosh Hashanah services. Okay, thank you everyone. And remember, the class is going to be rebroadcast tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time if you miss any of this class. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe. Hope to see you soon. Bye everyone.